I can't stress enough how important ADP is to everything you do. ADP is everything. No, you don't draft off ADP. Too many people come at me and say, Smitty, I don't draft off ADP.
You focus too much on ADP, Smitty.
But what most people don't understand is me understanding and comprehending ADP, absorbing ADP, allows me to know what my opponents are going to do. Knowing ADP like the back of your hand is no different than knowing all of the chess moves on a chessboard before your opponent moves, before you make your move. In chess, you're making your moves predicting what your opponent's going to do. We're playing chess while they're playing checkers, baby. In chess, you're trying to move 2-3 moves ahead. If you think I mean draft off ADP, make sure you take a guy exactly where his ADP is, then you don't understand what I'm saying when I say use ADP with every draft selection you make. What I mean by that is if Justin Jefferson's going at 3.01, you don't take him at 1.11. ADP tells you that. And if you know where players are going on average, you can clean up and make sure every draft selection you make has ceiling value and very low risk. Almost as important is knowing that every player has that line in the sand where they flip from overvalued to undervalued. Miles Sanders, stay away from him. 2.1, 2.2, 2.5, 2.8, 2.12, 3.02. I love him. The Fantasy Football Show begins now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. Smitty. Take a lap. It's the line in the sand. We've talked about this over and over and over. Every single player has a line in the sand. Use Justin Jefferson, who I absolutely love, and I think he will be a top 12 overall player in fantasy football in 2021, but his ADP's in the 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 range. So in this example, I don't hate him at 2.1 at all. I think he could actually earn that. So using a player I love, don't draft Justin Jefferson at 1.9. Don't draft Justin Jefferson at 1.12. Don't draft him at 2.04. I like him, but don't draft him there. 2.8, 2.9, love him at 2.10 and beyond. Apparently my line in the sand's a little higher than his ADP, and that's okay. You're not going to always use ADP exactly and say that's where I draft him. You use it so that you don't miss out, and you also stay a little bit ahead of it in many cases to make sure you get your guy. You land your guy. I'm not telling you to use ADP exactly where to draft, nor is ADP accurate at all. ADP is only telling you where Bill from accounting is drafting every single player on average. Where are they landing? Where are they getting taken? That's all ADP is. It's not used to draft. It's used to help you and guide you, navigate you through your own rankings so that people rise and fall perfectly on your pre-rank list or your draft sheet or your cheat sheet, and you clean up. It's so simple. This is like fantasy football 101, but so many people don't really follow it with every draft selection they make. You need to reset your mind. Every pick you make, think about it, use ADP, make your selection, recalibrate your mind after every single pick. You say to yourself, okay, pick number 2 comes. Who can outperform their ADP? Who is available? Who am I not taking too early? Can I get them later? Does the player I'm considering have the ability to earn his value in almost a worst case scenario? Justin Jefferson, 3.02. How does he not earn that? Even if he disappoints and gets no more TDs than he got last year, maybe he even gets a few less yards. Assuming he's healthy, he earns that value pretty easily. But his upside is top 10 overall. He could be a 1 to 5 wide receiver. I'm not saying he will be for sure. He's no lock whatsoever to do that. Kirk Cousins could go down, but he has the potential to be a top 1 to 5 wide receiver. And at third drafted player value, how do you not see that is the key to ADP, using it, understanding it, applying it, and dominating with it? It's a blueprint. It's knowing all the moves on the chessboard and then making your move. Not because ADP tells you, but because you know what everybody else is thinking. Now, line in the sand, let's go over a couple names of players I'm avoiding in 2021. Guys, I don't want any part of based on their ADP. But what happens if they keep falling, let's say? And I don't think some of these guys are going to fall to the range I'm going to be okay with, but I want to give you an example of not speaking in absolutes all the time. Everybody's like, don't take him. Take him. Don't take him. You better take him. There's that line in the sand for every single player. Above the line is where we won't take a player. So if we use the case of Derrick Henry, and I'm avoiding him to a certain degree in 2021, given his 2,000-yard curse he's potentially looking at. No running back has come back after a 2,000-yard season to look even remotely close to their 2,000-yard self. But Henry's a big dude taking a bunch of abuse, getting hit below the waist because he's too big to tackle upstairs. The injury risk is real. 300 plus carries in 2019, right around 400 total carries if you include the playoffs in 2020. That carry total alone, even if he didn't even rush for 2,000 yards, would concern me. The dude's 27 years old. Something happens to your body regardless of mileage at 27, 28, 29 years old. He's a bigger dude carrying a lot of weight, hitting the ground over and over, doing most of his damage between the tackles, which is the tough work. He's not dividing half his work into receptions and half into rushes. He's getting a bulk of the work up the middle, 300-pound lineman, dragging him to the ground, going for his knees. The mass of this man hitting the ground over and over and over at 6'3", 247, 5 NFL seasons behind him. He's not a spring chicken. Add in the 2,000-yard campaign, the 303 regular season carries, followed by 378 regular season carries back-to-back years in 2019 and 2020. The writing's on the wall for me to at least say, you know what? I'm going to draft a safer player around where Derrick Henry's going and let somebody else take the risk. And if I'm wrong, guess what? I'm still drafting a player I absolutely love at the draft range where I'm passing on Henry. I'm not going to be upset if Henry balls out for one more year. I'm not going to miss anything if I still take and draft a player I believe in, like a Jonathan Taylor or a D. Adams if I'm taking a wide receiver. I'll lose no sleep at night jumping a year early. But here's my point. The line in the sand. If Derrick Henry is a no-go for me at number 7, 8, where am I putting that line? Where above the line, I'm not taking Henry. I'd probably say around 9, 10, which means I probably won't own Henry in 2021 by design because I'm lowering that line in the sand so far that I'm probably not going to face the dilemma. But where's my line? Where does Henry go from a no-go, and flip into okay, I'll take a chance on Henry. Now that you mentioned he's going at pick 12, 13, I would take the chance on Derrick Henry at 9 or 10. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, Smitty, you're flipping back and forth. Of course I'm flipping back and forth. I just explained there is a line in the sand where every player flips into a buy, into a good value. Now, there's a gray area sometimes in between where it becomes a little bit. Sometimes that gray area is bigger for some players than it is for other players. Sometimes it flips like that. With a guy like Julio Jones, he has a massively big gray area. The turning point from going from a void to, okay, I'm in is huge. It's probably a round long. I'd probably say, okay, no first rounder, heck no. Second rounder, absolutely not. Third rounder, nah. All the way down to like fourth round, and then it's like, okay, maybe I'll jump in. That's a huge gray area. Almost the entire like mid-third to mid-fourth round, I'm like. And a guy like Miles Sanders, it's first round, absolutely not. Second round, no thank you. Third round's pretty good value. Line in the sand, 3.01, 3.02. Every player has a line in the sand. You just got to find out where that line is for you, because I can't answer that question. I have a line in the sand where I draft Patrick Mahomes. I think he's fantastic. Would I take him at 1.1? No! I don't need to. His ADP is like late second to top of the third. If I take Mahomes at number 11 overall, even though I love him and can justify that if he threw 50 TDs, he'd probably be worth that value, do I take him there? Absolutely not. You need to know the blueprint of your opponent so you don't jump the gun too early and don't maximize your value. And I know what you're saying, but what if I only play in one league and I have the 12 and 13 picks and I want Mahomes? Don't I take him? No. play in another league. I don't know what to tell you, but you need to be disciplined with your ADP so that you aren't reaching too far, injury strikes, and then you have no depth because you've stretched out every pick you've made, taken those big reaches, and you haven't packaged in any flexibility or comfort for detours and hiccups. It's all about discipline. And you should play in 2 or 3 leagues to account for this and because it's fun. Why would you not play in 2 or 3 leagues? That's the real question. But when you play in 2 or 3 leagues, you do have the power and you get the sense of patience where you're like, okay, well, in this league, I got the 12 pick. I'm not forcing this, and this. I can do that in that league. And auction, if you do auction drafts, you can control your own destiny and go after the players you want every time. Auction is the cure for anybody that doesn't know how to be disciplined with their picks and use ADP not to draft on, but to manipulate and win with. Nick Chubb. I'm not taking Nick Chubb in the top 8, top 9, but when he turns into a second rounder, I'm back in. Does that mean I hate Nick Chubb? No. Does that mean I have serious concerns about him staying healthy in 2021? And do I worry about Kareem Hunt? Why did they retain Kareem Hunt? There's worry and concern about Chubb's knee. And don't forget that Chubb had one of the most severe knee injuries in college football history. When your knee bends sideways or hyperextends one way or the other way, you're doing damage to all the surrounding ligaments and everything that makes up your knee. In soccer, when soccer players slide on the grass, use the ground as almost a cast or a splint, and then a player lands on their knee and it pops their ACL, very control-like. Sometimes the knee doesn't have damage all over. In football, it's very rare to tear your ACL, dislocate your knee, and not damage things along the side because you're typically doing some kind of overextending or side-to-side movement and smashing meniscus. You're tearing your LCL and your MCL are on this side of each of your knee. And if your knee goes this way, you're pulling on the MCL or you're pulling on the LCL or you're smashing down the meniscus. Knee injuries have a long-lasting effect. And the Chubb knee injury was so gruesome. I honestly don't know how he's doing what he's doing right now, let alone how he can continue to play at the level he's playing without having some kind of rapid degenerative knee issues like Todd Gurley. Now, when I came out and said, no Todd Gurley, the year he declined and fell off the face of the earth, he still got TDs that upcoming year that kind of salvaged his value a little bit, but Todd Gurley clearly didn't have it anymore. I'm not saying Nick Chubb has shown signs that Todd Gurley did, so I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this prediction, but I'm worried about Nick Chubb being overworked. He had a knee injury last year, was the opposite knee, but the guy takes a brutal pounding and is one of the most aggressive runners to his own body. It's not crazy to be like, hey, running backs have a very short shelf life and I'm not going to put my first round value in a player that has a competent running back behind him that is just as capable in Kareem Hunt, a history of knee injuries even last year. I'm not feeling confident about number 7 overall. Like I told you, if he falls into the second round, 2.01 even, I flip to like, in one league, I'll take him, but I don't like him number 6 or number 7 overall. I'd rather have D. Adams. I'd rather have Tyreek Hill. I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor. That's me. Do you? Don't worry about what I'm going to do. Use me as a guide or a push over the fence when you're on the fence about a topic, but you need to understand that even experts like me miss on a good year 25% of every call we make. Minimum. Nobody cranking out a video every single day on YouTube. 10 to 20 minute video full of all kinds of content, statements, and predictions that are not going to be cakewalk calls. I'm making bold statements. I'm putting bold stuff out there. I'm going to be wrong from time to time.
I'm a human being.
So if you love Nick Chubb, only let me guide you, not change your mind. And sometimes I get, Smitty, where's your proof for that? Where's your proof for this? I've got news for you. I'm going to take away some of the ammunition you have to use against me by telling you that a lot of my calls are based on stats. I use a ton of stats. I use a lot of statistics. I talk about the 2,000-yard curse. I talk about all these different things. But a majority, 75% of what I do is gut-driven and eye test. I didn't know Arian Foster was going to be a top 5 running back based on numbers. I believe it was week 16 and week 17 coming out of his rookie year. We had a flash, 2 games to look at. And I said on CBS Sports Radio to my boy Russ Bliss, I said, Arian Foster is a top 5 running back. I could see it on the field. I could see it in his movements. I know. My eyes don't lie. He's a top 5 running back. Heading into June and July, he was a 5th and 6th round pick. People won their leagues based on that call. That doesn't mean I don't miss 2. I thought Nkeal Harry was going to be something special, but I miscalculated his situation. I still believe the talent was there, but I completely missed on that one. We are going to miss things. We're going to land things. That's the nature of a fantasy football analyst. And the amount of content I crank out, there's no way I'm going to hit on everything. I love in the comments where somebody goes, yeah, but you missed on Darrell Henderson. Don't listen to this guy. He liked Darrell Henderson. One of his predictions did not work out. This guy's garbage. He's a human trash can because he liked Darrell Henderson. I have news for you. I've missed more than Darrell Henderson and Nkeal Harry. And anybody that doesn't take their misses and talk about them and just says, oh, I land everything, you don't want to follow them anyway. And a lot of what I'm teaching you here today is process, not necessarily the player. T. Higgins, for example. You might love T. Higgins, and I love him too. And if the Bengals don't draft a wide receiver, he could be a huge breakout candidate for 2021. He could also go the direction of Courtland Sutton, where Jerry Jeudy comes in and kind of caps Courtland Sutton's upside. I think he always will. It's unfortunate. Denver's got 2 wide receiver ones with not enough quarterback firepower to make both of them elite. And I feel Jeudy will float to the top. Higgins could be in that same kind of situation, but we'll see what happens in the draft. But if he's your boy and you think he's a top 10 wide receiver in the making, don't listen to anybody that tells you not to go invest in your boy. Just be smart about where you take him. Use ADP to outmaneuver your opponent. Don't go drafting him in the 4th round because you love him. And even if you end up being right, you're wrong because you didn't maximize value. I liked Mahomes more than anybody on record, YouTube, anywhere. Find me somebody that predicted him to be a top 1 to 5 quarterback like I did. But did I draft him in the 4th round saying, you guys will see? And even if he landed, you'd all laugh and say, you still drafted him in the 4th round when he was a double-digit round pick. You have to use ADP or you miss out on value. Josh Jacobs, no way in the 1st round, no way in the 2nd round. Mid-3rd, I start his gray areas all the way from mid-3rd to the 4th round. And even players I love, Josh Allen, no way I'm taking him in the 2nd round. I start kind of liking him in the 3rd round. He's an absolute monster steal in the 4th round. His gray area is kind of big mainly because he's a quarterback, and quarterbacks going early is so looked down upon. You're just wanting to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck and getting him as late as you can. So even in a case like Josh Allen, a guy I love, his gray area might be bigger than some players that I love. Size of the gray area before the flip happens from a void to draft doesn't always indicate that the player is a bad player or a risky player. It just means the gray area is big for a certain specific reason. Ceedee Lamb right now could be as good as a 2nd round player, but you don't take him there because you can get him in the 4th round or below. Don't even think about taking him in the 3rd round. You don't need to. If somebody reaches for him that high, well, then he's going to have him in that league. You can get Ceedee Lamb in another league, and auction is the way to guarantee you're going to get your guy. And again, it's so important to emphasize that line in the sand does not equal ADP. My line in the sand for Ridley is higher than his ADP. Ridley's ADP is around 2.7, but I'd take him as high as 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. And the reason my line in the sand is right there is because I see him equal to Diggs, Metcalf, ahead of Mike Thomas, slightly ahead of AJ Brown, but I like AJ Brown near as much. Those players to me are 2.2 to 2.5 worthy. And because they're so far above most of the other players that typically go around the 2.1 to 2.08 range, I'm not messing around with trying to take a guy I don't like because ADP says I should. Definitely draw your line in the sand for a player ahead of ADP if it makes a lot of sense. I don't take Ridley at 8. I love Ridley, but he's in a void for me, not in a negative sense, but ADP driven. an avoid for me in the first round, or at least to the bookend pick area. I'm not taking Ridley there because it's overpaying. I'm not maximizing my value. I'm drafting Ridley at 8, and then I have to have him deliver number 1, number 2, number 3 overall wide receiver value to break even. If I draft Ridley at 2.3, 2.4, even though that line in the sand is higher than his ADP, which is at 2.07, Ridley can still crush his 2.04 draft value if he ends up being a top 2, 3 wide receiver in fantasy football. Your line in the sand just has to have room for upside, and it has to package in the risk, meaning if Ridley isn't quite as good as I anticipate, my line in the sand is in a perfect place to where even if he underperforms, he pretty much still gets me what I paid, which is the key to every draft selection you make. Worst case scenario, can they probably earn close to what you're paying? Great pick. If on the clock and you draft a player that can completely explode from the draft slot you're taking him in, good pick. Taking a guy like Julio Jones at 3.02, where he has to deliver to get you your value back, and if he disappoints you, you lose out on like 2 rounds of value. Bad pick. So simple. People don't recalibrate at every pick and treat each pick individually. Like, let me go through this process of checking those off and then reset. Next pick comes up, reset. How many times do you walk out of your draft and you say, I didn't like that pick? Why? Why not take the player you feel like can crush his ADP every time? Why let ADP influence you into taking a guy you don't like because everyone else is taking that guy? Don't use ADP like that. Use ADP as a weapon, not a pure pressure. Take so and so. You're on the clock at number 7 overall, and Nick Chubb shouldn't probably be there, but he still is, and you're so worried about everybody going, oh, he didn't take Nick Chubb. Don't let that kind of pressure make you draft a guy you don't believe in, a guy that doesn't have the risk package into the value. Don't draft that way. Every player has a line in the sand.
Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Some sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has a line in the sand. Every player has